The sun was shining brightly on a crisp Saturday morning, and the parking lot of the local grocery store was already bustling with activity. Cars lined up neatly in their spaces, and shoppers hurried in and out, carrying bags filled with groceries. Among them was a young black woman, driving her modest sedan, looking for a spot to park. She had just finished a long week at work and was eager to grab a few things before heading home to relax. As she slowly drove through the rows, she noticed an empty spot near the entrance. It was perfect, close enough to make her trip quick and easy. She signaled, checked her mirrors, and began to pull into the space. But just as she was about to park, a sleek, expensive car zoomed in from the opposite direction, cutting her off and taking the spot. The woman blinked in surprise, her hands still on the steering wheel. She wasn't one to make a scene, but this was clearly rude. Before she could even process what had happened, the doors of the other car swung open, and a couple stepped out. They were well-dressed, looking like they had just come from some high-end event. The man adjusted his sunglasses and glanced at her with a smirk, while the woman shot her a dismissive look. The black woman took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She rolled down her window and said politely, "Excuse me, but I was about to park there." "You just took the spot." The man chuckled, leaning casually against his car. "Oh, were you? Sorry, sweetheart. Guess you weren't fast enough." His tone was dripping with sarcasm, and his partner giggled, clearly enjoying the situation. The woman felt a pang of frustration but decided not to escalate. "It's fine," she said, forcing a smile. "I'll find another spot." But as she began to drive away, she heard the woman call out, "Yeah, you do that. Maybe next time, don't bother trying to park where you don't belong." The words stung. The black woman clenched the steering wheel, her heart racing. She knew exactly what they meant. It wasn't just about the parking spot, it was something deeper, something uglier. She had faced this kind of behavior before, but it never got easier. She found another spot a few rows away and parked her car. As she stepped out, she noticed the couple walking into the store, laughing loudly, as if they had just won some kind of victory. She took a moment to collect herself, reminding herself not to let their ignorance ruin her day. Inside the store, she grabbed a cart and started her shopping. She tried to focus on her list, but her mind kept drifting back to the encounter. Why did people have to be so mean? Why did they feel the need to put others down just to feel superior? As she turned down the cereal aisle, she saw the couple again. They were standing near the shelves, arguing over which brand to buy. The woman noticed her and whispered something to her partner, who glanced over and smirked. The black woman ignored them, focusing on her shopping. But the couple wasn't done. As she reached for a box of oatmeal, the woman stepped closer and said loudly, "You know, some people just don't know their place. Always trying to take what isn't theirs." The black woman froze, her hand still on the box. She turned to face them, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" The man stepped forward, his tone mocking. "You heard her. Maybe you should learn to stay in your lane." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She felt a mix of anger and sadness, but she refused to let them see how much they were affecting her. "I don't know what your problem is," she said, her voice steady, "but I'm just here to shop, just like you. I'm not bothering anyone." The woman sneered. "Oh, you're bothering us just by being here. Why don't you go find another store? One that's more your style." The black woman took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. She knew arguing with them wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she decided to take the high road. "I'm not going anywhere," she said firmly. "I have every right to be here, just like you." She turned her cart around and walked away, her heart pounding. She could hear the couple laughing behind her, but she refused to look back. She finished her shopping as quickly as possible, eager to get out of the store and away from their toxic energy. As she approached the checkout line, she noticed the couple ahead of her, still laughing and whispering to each other. She kept her distance, not wanting to engage with them any further. But as she waited, she couldn't help but feel a sense of injustice. Why should she have to put up with this kind of treatment? Why should anyone? When it was finally her turn to pay, she handed the cashier her items and forced a smile. The cashier, a kind-looking older woman, noticed her tense expression and asked, "Are you okay, dear? You look upset." The black woman hesitated, then nodded. "I'm fine. Just dealing with some rude people." The cashier glanced over at the couple, who were now leaving the store, and sighed. "Some folks just don't know how to treat others with respect. Don't let them get to you, honey. You're better than that." Her words were comforting, and the black woman felt a small sense of relief. She thanked the cashier and headed out to her car, determined not to let the couple's behavior ruin her day. But as she loaded her groceries into the trunk, she noticed something strange. The couple's car was still in the parking lot, and they were standing nearby, looking panicked. The man was on his phone, pacing back and forth, while the woman was frantically searching through her purse. Curious, the black woman watched for a moment, then decided to approach them. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her tone neutral. The man looked up, his face red with frustration. "No, everything is not okay. Our car won't start, and we're stuck here." The black woman raised an eyebrow. "That's too bad. Maybe you should call for help." The woman groaned. "We've been trying, but no one's answering. We don't know what to do." For a moment, the black woman considered walking away. After how they had treated her, they didn't deserve her help. But then she remembered the cashier's words, "You're better than that." She sighed and said, "I have jumper cables in my car. If you want, I can help you get it started." The couple stared at her, their expressions a mix of surprise and embarrassment. The man stammered, You'd do that for us?" She nodded. "Yeah. But maybe next time, think twice before treating someone like they don't belong." The couple looked down, clearly ashamed. As she went to get her cables, she couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. Sometimes, the best way to deal with bullies was to kill them with kindness. The black woman walked back to her car, her step steady and deliberate. She could feel the couple's eyes on her, their earlier arrogance now replaced with a mix of desperation and guilt. She opened her trunk, pulled out the jumper cables, and carried them over to their car. The man quickly popped the hood of his vehicle, his hands fumbling as he tried to figure out what to do next. "Here," she said, handing him one end of the cables. "Connect the red clip to the positive terminal on your battery. I'll handle the other end." The man nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment. He followed her instructions, his movements awkward and unsure. His partner stood silently nearby, her arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. The black woman could sense their discomfort, but she didn't say anything. She wasn't doing this for them, she was doing it because it was the right thing to do. Once the cables were securely connected, she returned to her car and started the engine. The couple watched anxiously as she revved the engine a few times, sending power through the cables to their dead battery. After a few tense moments, the man turned the key in the ignition, and his car sputtered to life. "It's working," he exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. The black woman turned off her engine and stepped out of her car to disconnect the cables. The man quickly did the same on his end, his earlier bravado completely gone. He handed the cables back to her, his eyes downcast. "Thank you," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, not saying anything. She didn't need their gratitude, and she certainly didn't want to prolong the interaction. As she turned to walk back to her car, the woman finally spoke up. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm sorry for how we acted earlier. That was wrong of us." The black woman paused, surprised by the apology. She turned to face them, her expression calm but firm. "It's not just about how you treated me," she said. "It's about how you treat people in general. Everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are or where they come from." The couple nodded, their faces filled with genuine remorse. The man cleared his throat and added, "You're right. We were out of line. We're really sorry." She studied them for a moment, then gave a small nod. "I hope you'll remember this the next time you're tempted to judge someone. Kindness costs nothing, but it can mean everything." With that, she walked back to her car, leaving the couple standing in silence. As she drove away, she felt a sense of closure. She had stood up for herself without stooping to their level, and in the end, she had shown them that kindness could overcome even the ugliest behavior. The rest of her day passed uneventfully. She went home, put away her groceries, and spent the afternoon relaxing. But as she sat on her couch, sipping a cup of tea, she couldn't help but reflect on what had happened. It wasn't the first time she had faced discrimination, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. But each time, she reminded herself that she had the power to rise above it, not just for herself, but for others who might face similar situations. Later that evening, she decided to share her experience with a close friend. They met at a cozy cafe, and as she recounted the story, her friend listened intently, shaking her head in disbelief. "I can't believe people still act like that," her friend said, her voice filled with frustration. "But the way you handled it, that was amazing. You showed them what real strength looks like." The black woman smiled softly. "I just did what felt right. I didn't want to let their negativity bring me down." Her friend reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're an inspiration, you know that? Not everyone would have been so calm and composed in that situation." The compliment warmed her heart, but she shrugged it off. "I just hope they learned something from it. Maybe next time, they'll think twice before treating someone that way." As they continued talking, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, and the black woman felt her spirits lift. She was surrounded by people who loved and supported her, and that was what truly mattered. The next morning, she woke up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. She had plans to meet up with some colleagues for a community cleanup event, and she was looking forward to spending time with people who shared her values. As she arrived at the park where the event was being held, she was greeted by a group of friendly faces. They handed her a pair of gloves and a trash bag, and together, they set to work picking up litter and making the park a cleaner, more beautiful place. As she bent down to pick up a discarded soda can, she noticed a familiar car driving past the park. It was the couple from the grocery store. They slowed down as they passed, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. The woman in the passenger seat gave a small, hesitant wave, and the black woman nodded in acknowledgement before turning back to her task. She didn't know if the encounter had truly changed them, but she hoped it had. Change didn't happen overnight, but every small step counted. And as she looked around at the group of people working together to make a difference, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The world wasn't perfect, and there would always be challenges to face. But as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, there was always a chance for things to get better. The community cleanup event was in full swing, and the park was buzzing with energy. People of all ages worked together, picking up trash, planting flowers, and painting over graffiti. The black woman felt a sense of pride as she looked around at the progress they were making. It was a reminder that when people came together with a common purpose, they could create something beautiful. As she knelt down to pull weeds from a flower bed, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a message from her friend, checking in to see how the event was going. She smiled and quickly typed a reply, letting her know everything was going well. Just as she was putting her phone away, she noticed a small group of kids running toward her, their arms filled with trash bags. One of them, a little girl with pigtails, tripped and spilled her bag, scattering trash everywhere. The black woman quickly stood up and walked over to help. "Are you okay?" she asked, kneeling down beside the girl. The girl nodded, her face red with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "Don't worry about it," the black woman said with a warm smile. "Accidents happen. Let's clean it up together, okay?" The girl's face lit up, and together, they gathered the trash and put it back in the bag. As they worked, the girl looked up at her and asked, "Why are you helping us?" The question caught her off guard, but she answered honestly. "Because it's the right thing to do. When we help each other, we make the world a better place." The girl thought about this for a moment, then nodded. "I want to help too." The black woman smiled. "You already are. You're doing a great job." As the day went on, she found herself chatting with different people, sharing stories and laughter. It was a refreshing change from the negativity she had faced the day before. Here, in this park, surrounded by people who cared about their community, she felt a sense of belonging. By the time the event wrapped up, the park looked completely transformed. The flower beds were vibrant with color, the trash was gone, and the benches and playground equipment gleamed with fresh paint. Everyone gathered for a group photo, and as the camera clicked, the black woman felt a surge of pride. As people began to pack up and head home, she stayed behind to help the organizers clean up the supplies. One of them, a middle-aged man with a kind smile, approached her and said, "Thank you for all your hard work today. You really made a difference." She shook her head modestly. "It was a team effort. I'm just glad I could be a part of it." The man nodded. "Well, we're lucky to have you. If you're ever interested in volunteering again, let us know. We'd love to have you back." She smiled. "I'd like that." As she walked back to her car, she felt a sense of fulfillment. The day had been a reminder of the good that could come from kindness and cooperation. It was a stark contrast to the ugliness she had encountered the day before, but it also gave her hope. When she got home, she decided to write about her experience in her journal. She wanted to remember the feeling of being part of something bigger than herself, of making a positive impact in her community. As she wrote, she reflected on the couple from the grocery store and how their behavior had been so different from the people she had met today. She wondered if they had learned anything from their encounter. Had they thought about what she had said? Had it made them reconsider their actions? She didn't know, but she hoped it had planted a seed of change. The next morning, she woke up early and decided to go for a walk. The sun was just rising, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. As she walked, she passed by the grocery store where the incident had happened. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to go in. As she browsed the aisles, she kept an eye out for the couple, half expecting to see them again. But they were nowhere to be found. She finished her shopping and headed to the checkout, where she was greeted by the same kind cashier from before. "Good morning, dear," the cashier said with a smile. "How are you today?" The black woman returned the smile. "I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?" The cashier sighed. "Oh, you know, same old, same old. But it's always nice to see a friendly face." As the cashier rang up her items, the black woman felt a sense of gratitude. The world might have its challenges, but there were still good people in it, people who cared, who showed kindness, who made a difference. As she left the store, she noticed a small poster on the community bulletin board. It was advertising a workshop on diversity and inclusion, hosted by a local organization. She took a photo of the poster, thinking it might be something she'd like to attend. The encounter with the couple had been a reminder of the work that still needed to be done, but it had also shown her the power of standing up for what was right. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The black woman decided to attend the diversity and inclusion workshop advertised on the community bulletin board. It was scheduled for the following weekend, and she felt it was a step in the right direction, not just for herself, but for her community. She hoped to learn more about how to address prejudice and foster understanding, and maybe even meet others who shared her commitment to making a difference. When the day arrived, she walked into the community center where the workshop was being held. The room was filled with people of all ages and backgrounds, and the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. She found a seat near the front and introduced herself to the woman sitting next to her, who turned out to be a teacher at a local school. "I'm so glad I came," the teacher said. "This is such an important topic, and I think we all have a lot to learn." She started by reaching out to the teacher she had met at the workshop, and together, they began planning a small project to promote diversity and inclusion at the local school. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of frustration, but she reminded herself of the progress she had already made. Every small step mattered, and every conversation had the potential to create change. As she sat down to write in her journal that evening, she felt a sense of gratitude. The world wasn't perfect, but it was full of possibilities. And as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, there was always hope. The black woman's collaboration with the teacher from the workshop quickly gained momentum. They decided to organize a Cultural Awareness Day at the local elementary school, where students and their families could share traditions, food, and stories from their diverse backgrounds. The goal was to celebrate differences and foster a sense of unity within the community. Planning the event was no small task. They held meetings after work, brainstormed ideas, and reached out to parents and local organizations for support. The black woman found herself stepping into a leadership role, coordinating volunteers and managing logistics. It was challenging, but also deeply rewarding. One evening, as they were finalizing the schedule for the event, the teacher turned to her and said, "I'm so glad we're doing this. The kids are going to love it, and I think it's going to make a real impact." The black woman nodded. "Me too. It's amazing how much we can accomplish when we work together." As the event drew closer, the excitement grew. Flyers were distributed, social media posts were shared, and local businesses donated supplies and prizes. The black woman even reached out to a few friends who were musicians and artists, asking if they'd be willing to perform or showcase their work. To her delight, they all agreed. The day of the event arrived, and the school gymnasium was transformed into a vibrant celebration of culture and community. Tables were set up around the room, each representing a different country or tradition. There was music, dancing, and the smell of delicious food filled the air. The black woman stood near the entrance, greeting families as they arrived. She was dressed in a colorful outfit that reflected her own heritage, and she felt a deep sense of pride as she watched the room fill with people. One of the first families to arrive was a group she recognized from the grocery store, the same couple who had bullied her over the parking spot, along with their young daughter. The black woman felt a pang of surprise but quickly composed herself. She approached them with a warm smile. "Welcome," she said. "I'm so glad you could make it." The couple looked visibly uncomfortable, but their daughter, a bright-eyed girl of about 7, tugged on her mother's hand. "Mom, look. They have face painting." The woman forced a smile and nodded. "Yes, sweetie. Go ahead." As the girl ran off to join the other children, the couple lingered for a moment. The man cleared his throat and said, We wanted to come and support the event. It's a good thing you're doing here." The black woman nodded. "Thank you. I think it's important for kids to learn about different cultures and to see that our differences are something to celebrate, not fear." The woman looked down, her voice soft. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened that day at the store. We're really sorry." The black woman felt a lump in her throat but kept her composure. "I appreciate that. It's not easy to admit when we're wrong, but it's the first step toward making things right." The man nodded. "We're trying to do better. For our daughter, especially. We don't want her growing up with the same prejudices we had." The black woman smiled. "That's all any of us can do, try to be better." I'm glad you're here today. I hope you enjoy the event." As the couple walked further into the room, the black woman felt a sense of closure. She didn't know if their apology was genuine or if they would truly change, but she was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. After all, change was a process, and everyone deserved a chance to grow. The rest of the event was a resounding success. Families mingled, children laughed and played, and the performances brought everyone together. As the black woman looked around the room, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what community was all about, coming together, learning from one another, and celebrating what made each person unique. As the event wrapped up, the teacher approached her, beaming. "We did it. And it was even better than I imagined." The black woman smiled. "We did. And this is just the beginning." The success of the Cultural Awareness Day sparked a wave of positivity in the community. Parents, teachers, and local leaders praised the event, and many expressed interest in making it an annual tradition. The black woman felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her efforts had made a tangible difference. In the days following the event, she received several messages from people who had attended, thanking her for organizing such a meaningful experience. One message, in particular, stood out. It was from the couple who had bullied her at the grocery store. "We just wanted to say thank you for including us in the event. It was eye-opening for us, and our daughter hasn't stopped talking about it. We realize now how much we still have to learn, and we're committed to doing better. Thank you for giving us a second chance." The black woman read the message several times, her heart swelling with emotion. She hadn't expected an apology, let alone such a heartfelt one. It was a reminder that people could change, even if it took time and effort. She decided to respond, keeping her tone warm and encouraging. "Thank you for your message. I'm so glad you and your daughter enjoyed the event. Change isn't easy, but it's worth it. I'm here if you ever want to talk or need support." The exchange left her feeling hopeful. It wasn't just about one couple, it was about the ripple effect of kindness and understanding. If they could change, maybe others could too. Buoyed by the success of the Cultural Awareness Day, the black woman began exploring other ways to promote inclusion in her community. She reached out to the facilitator of the diversity workshop and offered to help plan the upcoming community dialogue. Together, they brainstormed topics and invited guest speakers who could share their experiences and insights. The dialogue was scheduled to take place at the community center, and the black woman worked tirelessly to ensure everything was in place. She designed flyers, coordinated with volunteers, and even reached out to local media to spread the word. On the day of the event, the room was packed. People of all ages and backgrounds filled the seats, eager to listen and learn. The black woman stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding with a mix of nerves and excitement. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady. "This is a space for open and honest conversations. We may not always agree, but we can always listen and learn from one another." The event was a powerful experience. People shared personal stories, asked difficult questions, and engaged in thoughtful discussions. The black woman listened intently, taking notes and occasionally offering her own perspective. One of the most moving moments came when a young man stood up and shared his experience of growing up as an immigrant. "I used to feel like I didn't belong," he said, his voice trembling. "But events like this remind me that my story matters, and that there are people who care." The room erupted in applause, and the black woman felt tears welling up in her eyes. This was why she did what she did, to create spaces where people felt seen, heard, and valued. As the event came to a close, the facilitator approached her. "You did an amazing job today. This wouldn't have been possible without your hard work and dedication." The black woman smiled. "It was a team effort. I'm just glad we could create something meaningful." That evening, as she reflected on the day, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. She had faced challenges, but she had also seen the power of kindness, understanding, and community. She knew there was still work to be done, but she was ready to keep moving forward. One step at a time, one conversation at a time, she was helping to create a world where everyone felt like they belonged. The success of the community dialogue inspired the Black woman to take her efforts even further. She began collaborating with local organizations to create a series of workshops and events focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Each event brought new faces and new stories, and she found herself learning just as much as she was teaching. One of the most impactful projects she took on was a mentorship program for young people in the community. The program paired students with mentors who could provide guidance, support, and encouragement as they navigated the challenges of growing up in a diverse but often divided world. The Black woman became a mentor herself, working with a bright and curious high school student named Jasmine. Jasmine was passionate about social justice but often felt overwhelmed by the negativity she saw in the world. During their first meeting, the Black woman listened as Jasmine shared her frustrations. "Sometimes it feels like no matter what we do, things don't change," Jasmine said, her voice tinged with frustration. "People are still so divided, and it's hard to stay hopeful." The Black woman nodded, understanding the feeling all too well. It's easy to feel that way, especially when we're surrounded by so much negativity. But change doesn't happen overnight. It's the small, consistent actions that add up over time. Jasmine looked at her, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "What kind of actions?" The Black woman smiled. "It can be as simple as having a conversation with someone who has a different perspective than you, or standing up for someone who's being treated unfairly. Even small acts of kindness can make a big difference." Over the weeks that followed, the two worked together on a project to promote kindness and inclusion at Jasmine's school. They organized a Kindness Week, where students were encouraged to perform random acts of kindness and share their experiences. The response was overwhelming, with students and teachers alike embracing the initiative. One day, as they were setting up a display of kindness stories in the school hallway, Jasmine turned to the Black woman and said, "I think I get it now. It's not about changing the whole world at once. It's about changing the world around you, one person at a time." The Black woman felt a surge of pride. Exactly. And when we all do our part, those small changes add up to something much bigger. As the mentorship program grew, so did the Black woman's sense of purpose. She found herself spending more and more time at the community center, working with young people and planning events. It was exhausting at times, but also incredibly fulfilling. One evening, as she was leaving the center after a long day, she ran into the couple from the grocery store. They were walking hand in hand, their daughter skipping ahead of them. When they saw her, they stopped and smiled. "We were just talking about you," the woman said. "We wanted to thank you again for everything you've done. You've really inspired us to be better." The Black woman smiled. "I'm so glad to hear that. How's your daughter doing?" The man grinned. "She's thriving. She's been talking non-stop about the Cultural Awareness Day and all the things she learned. It's opened up a whole new world for her." The Black woman felt a warm glow in her chest. "That's wonderful. Kids have such open hearts and minds. They remind us of what's possible." The couple nodded, their expressions filled with gratitude. "We're still learning," the woman admitted. "But we're trying. And that's because of you." The Black woman shook her head modestly. "It's not because of me. It's because you chose to make a change. That's something to be proud of." As they parted ways, the Black woman felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had started this journey not knowing where it would lead, but now she could see the impact of her efforts. It wasn't just about changing minds, it was about touching hearts and inspiring others to do the same. When she got home that night, she sat down to write in her journal. She reflected on the progress she had made, the people she had met, and the lessons she had learned. It hadn't been an easy path, but it had been worth it. As she closed her journal, she thought about the future. There was still so much work to be done, but she was ready for the challenge. She knew that as long as she stayed true to her values and kept moving forward, she could make a difference, not just in her community, but in the world. The Black woman's work in the community continued to gain momentum. Her mentorship program expanded, reaching more students and inspiring other adults to get involved. The Kindness Week initiative at Jasmine's school became an annual event, and other schools in the area began adopting similar programs. One day, she received an unexpected invitation. A local nonprofit organization that focused on social justice wanted to honor her with an award for her contributions to the community. At first, she hesitated, feeling uncomfortable with the idea of being in the spotlight. But after some encouragement from her friends and colleagues, she decided to accept. The award ceremony was held at a banquet hall, filled with community leaders, activists, and supporters. As she stood at the podium to accept the award, she looked out at the sea of faces and felt a mix of emotions, gratitude, humility, and a deep sense of purpose. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This award isn't just for me. It's for everyone who has worked alongside me to make our community a better place. It's for the mentors, the volunteers, the teachers, and the students who have shown us what's possible when we come together with kindness and understanding." She paused, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. "I didn't start this journey thinking I would change the world. I started it because I wanted to make a difference, even if it was just for one person. But what I've learned is that when we lift each other up, when we listen to each other's stories, and when we stand up for what's right, we create a ripple effect that can change lives." The room erupted in applause, and she felt tears welling up in her eyes. As she stepped down from the podium, she was greeted with hugs and handshakes from people who had been touched by her work. Among them was Jasmine, who had come to the ceremony with her family. The young girl ran up to her, her face beaming with pride. "You were amazing," she exclaimed. "I want to be just like you when I grow up." The Black woman smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "You already are, Jasmine. You're kind, brave, and full of passion. The world needs more people like you." As the evening came to a close, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The award was a recognition of her efforts, but it was also a reminder of the responsibility she carried. There was still so much work to be done, and she was more determined than ever to keep moving forward. In the weeks that followed, she continued to pour her energy into her projects. She organized workshops, mentored young people, and collaborated with local organizations to promote inclusion and understanding. Her work began to attract attention beyond her community, and she was invited to speak at conferences and events in other cities. One of the most meaningful opportunities came when she was asked to speak at a national conference on diversity and inclusion. The event brought together leaders from across the country, and she was honored to share her story and insights. As she stood on the stage, looking out at the audience, she felt a sense of awe. She had come so far from that day in the grocery store parking lot, and she knew that her journey was far from over. "Change starts with us," she said, her voice strong and clear. "It starts with how we treat each other, how we listen to each other, and how we stand up for what's right. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it." The audience responded with a standing ovation, and she felt a surge of hope. She knew that the work she was doing was making a difference, not just in her community, but in the world. When she returned home, she was greeted with a surprise. The couple from the grocery store had organized a small gathering in her honor, inviting friends, colleagues, and community members to celebrate her achievements. As she walked into the room, she was overwhelmed by the love and support. The couple approached her, their faces filled with gratitude. "We wanted to do something to show how much you mean to us," the woman said. "You've changed our lives, and we're so grateful for everything you've done." The Black woman felt tears streaming down her face as she hugged them. "Thank you," she whispered. This means so much to me." The evening was filled with laughter, stories, and heartfelt speeches. As she looked around the room, she felt a deep sense of connection. These were the people who had supported her, inspired her, and believed in her. As the night came to an end, she sat down to reflect on everything that had happened. She had started this journey not knowing where it would lead, but now she could see the impact of her efforts. It wasn't just about changing minds, it was about building bridges, creating connections, and inspiring others to do the same. She knew there was still work to be done, but she was ready for the challenge. With the support of her community and the strength of her convictions, she knew she could continue to make a difference, one step at a time. The Black woman's journey had become a source of inspiration for many, but she never lost sight of why she had started this work in the first place. It wasn't about recognition or awards, it was about creating a world where everyone felt valued, respected, and included. One morning, as she sat at her kitchen table sipping tea, she received a call from the teacher she had worked with on the Cultural Awareness Day. "We're planning another event," the teacher said excitedly. "And we'd love for you to be a part of it." The Black woman smiled. "Of course. What do you have in mind?" The teacher explained that they wanted to expand the event to include more schools and communities, creating a larger platform for celebrating diversity and promoting inclusion. It was an ambitious plan, but the Black woman was thrilled by the idea. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into the planning process. She reached out to schools, community organizations, and local leaders, building a network of support. The response was overwhelming, with people from all walks of life eager to contribute. The event, now called the Community Unity Festival, was set to take place in a large park, with activities, performances, and workshops for all ages. The Black woman worked tirelessly, coordinating volunteers, securing sponsors, and promoting the event. As the day of the festival approached, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the biggest project she had ever taken on, and she wanted everything to go smoothly. When the day finally arrived, the park was transformed into a vibrant celebration of culture and community. Booths lined the pathways, offering food, crafts, and information about different cultures. A stage was set up for performances, and a large tent housed workshops on topics like empathy, communication, and social justice. The Black woman stood near the entrance, greeting people as they arrived. She was dressed in a colorful outfit that reflected her heritage, and she felt a deep sense of pride as she watched the park fill with people. One of the first families to arrive was the couple from the grocery store, along with their daughter. The girl ran up to her, holding a handmade sign that read, "Thank you for teaching us kindness." The Black woman felt tears welling up in her eyes as she hugged the girl. "Thank you for being here," she said. "You're a big part of why we do this." The couple approached her, their faces filled with gratitude. "We're so proud of you," the woman said. "You've done so much for this community, and we're honored to be a part of it." The Black woman smiled. "This is a team effort. We're all in this together." As the festival got underway, the park buzzed with energy. People of all ages and backgrounds mingled, sharing stories, laughter, and experiences. The performances were a highlight, with musicians, dancers, and poets showcasing the richness of their cultures. One of the most moving moments came when Jasmine, her mentee, took the stage to share a poem she had written about kindness and inclusion. The crowd listened in rapt attention as the young girl spoke, her voice filled with passion and hope. Kindness is a language that everyone can understand. It's a bridge that connects us, hand in hand. When we open our hearts and let love in, we create a world where everyone wins. The audience erupted in applause, and the Black woman felt tears streaming down her face. She had watched Jasmine grow and blossom, and now she was inspiring others with her words. As the festival came to a close, the Black woman stood on the stage to thank everyone for coming. "Today has been a reminder of what's possible when we come together with open hearts and minds," she said. Let's carry this spirit of unity and kindness with us, not just today, but every day. The crowd responded with cheers and applause, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what she had been working for, a community where everyone felt like they belonged. As she walked through the park, saying goodbye to friends and colleagues, she felt a sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. She had faced challenges, but she had also seen the power of kindness, understanding, and community. When she got home that night, she sat down to write in her journal. She reflected on the day, the people she had met, and the lessons she had learned. It had been a day of celebration, but it was also a reminder of the work that still needed to be done. As she closed her journal, she thought about the future. There would always be challenges, but she was ready to face them. With the support of her community and the strength of her convictions, she knew she could continue to make a difference, one step at a time. And as she looked out the window at the stars shining brightly in the night sky, she felt a deep sense of hope. The world wasn't perfect, but it was full of possibilities. And as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, there was always a chance for things to get better.